gonna eat me soon, aren't you?
Hi. Welcome to another movie plot. Spoilers ahead. Radio announcer Grant Mazzy drives through a blizzard on his way to work in the small Canadian town of Pontypool. Listening to perturbing stories on the radio, he pulls over at a stop sign before being startled by a strange woman standing out in the middle of the storm.
Who are you?
She eerily repeats the words he asks her while disappearing into the darkness, giving Grant the creeps. Arriving at the station, Grant is greeted by his bubbly technical assistant Laurel and Drummond.
Morning, Mr. Mazzy.
As Grant makes the morning announcements, we meet station manager Sidney Breyer, who hired Grant when he was desperate for work but he hates the cold.
My way into work.
They argue about the way to run the station, as the producer wants basic small-town news, while Grant wants shock and awe, saying that a pissed-off listener might go tell his friend to also listen. Reports come in throughout the day from their helicopter reporter Ken Loney, who is actually just a man making helicopter noises from his van while watching the town from atop a hill.
Fatalities here.
Grant tells the story of the strange lady and says that if anyone knows what he should do about it, they should call into the station.
Oh, where are you calling
The
from?
first call Laurel receives is someone babbling incoherently, and the second is cut off by police reports of a hostage situation involving ice fishermen, but it gets shut down by Sydney.
Stay tuned.
She tells Laurel that the police said to drop the story, before reports come through from Ken about a riot happening outside of a doctor's office, just 3 miles from the station.
Unruly.
Ken reports on hundreds of people cramming themselves into the building, before it suddenly blows up, and he describes the scene as chaos and carnage before the call gets cut off. Sydney and Laurel get on the phones to try and confirm the reports, but their witnesses all disconnect when they go to air, which keeps them thinking it's a hoax. When a police officer calls in, he tells them it all started when a mob of people attacked a senile old lady. They were chanting the words she spoke as they killed her. Other reports begin to come in of 2 children trapped in a car, under a mountain of crazed people who are all imitating windshield wiper sounds, and a herd of people heading towards the station. A journalist calls in from the BBC to talk to Grant about breaking the big story, where a confused Grant hears for the first time that the town of Pontypool has been quarantined by the military.
He knows nothing.
Just then Ken finally calls back, begging for help as he is being chased by what he describes as naked cannibals, and is hiding in a grain silo on a farm nearby. He reports on the group of people pulling someone from a car with their mouths, but says one heard him and it's running at the silo. Being this is a small town, he recognizes him as a local teen, who has had his hands chewed off and broke his back when he ran into the silo. When Ken attempts to get closer in order to hear what the boy is mumbling, the line gets cut and the station receives a French transmission, instructing everyone to remain indoors and not to use terms of endearment or any English language. Ken finally gets back through to the station and he holds the phone up to the teenage boy's mouth, where it sounds like a baby trapped inside him.
I was a little baby.
Grant's had enough of it, believing that the town is messing with him since he is new, and that Sydney is behind it.
You are fucking with me!
He tries to leave the station into the blizzard, but Laurel pulls him back when she spots a horde of people. They smash against the walls, all repeating the last words they heard. Locking themselves in the building, Grant proceeds to give obituaries, all of which are just family members who have killed each other or themselves, presumably after infection. Sydney says that her children will be safe in town with her ex-husband, and asks Laurel if anything this crazy happened to her while serving in Afghanistan. Laurel replies by repeating the word missing over and over again, and gets stuck imitating Sydney's boiling kettle. Suddenly Dr. Mendez, whose clinic was being attacked earlier, sneaks in, and when he spots Laurel he takes Sydney into the soundproof booth with Grant to tell his story.
What do you want to tell?
He says that the now infected Laurel is hunting them even if she doesn't know it yet, and that just being quiet is sometimes enough for them to stop. But when she starts bashing her head into the studio, the curious Mendez says that he has never seen what happens when they don't have anyone to kill. A few hours since we last heard from him, Ken reports that the boy has passed, and that a crowd of infected all walked past chanting submarine. While on the line, Ken begins to succumb to the virus, repeating the word sample over and over before we finally lose him for good.
Ken Loney was a pedophile.
Mendez realizes that the virus isn't spread through blood but through speech. Once infected words are heard, the virus takes hold of the host, but only certain words infect certain people. He describes it as a monster in our language trying to keep its host alive, only duplicating itself when the listener understands the word.
Oh, really?
Not wanting to speak anymore so as to not bring about the apocalypse himself, Grant goes quiet on air, but Mendez already begins showing signs of infection. This entire time Laurel repeatedly slams her head against the sound booth's window, chewing off her own lips and eventually dying as she can't pass the virus on. The horde then breaks into the radio station and surrounds the booth.
What we need is a flamethrower.
As the three hide in the dark and come up with the idea to use a loudspeaker outside the station in order to lure the mob away. Dr. Mendez begins speaking in Armenian, which reduces the symptoms of the infection, concluding that it is only the English language, so Grant and Sydney begin speaking French. They leave Mendez in the booth for fear that he may still turn hostile, and come across an infected girl who tries to eat through Sydney. But Grant just throws her into the wall and they stomp her to death. As Mendez talks away to himself in the booth, the pair discuss who should kill him when the time arrives. Suddenly the power reboots and the speakers inside begin to blast music, so Sydney and Grant lock themselves inside a room to escape the arguing horde approaching, but Mendez slips in as well. He seems to have stifled his infection, and says goodbye as he takes off out the window, luring the mob away from the radio station to save the remaining two. They stay locked in the room for hours, having conversations with a pen on the wall since Grant doesn't speak French well, until eventually Sydney becomes drunk and starts to speak in English. Grant has the realization that the infected are repeating the words as a defense mechanism, since understanding the word is what causes the infection. The human side of them is trying to repeat the word over and over again until it's incomprehensible.
This is huge.
Sydney quotes the phrase that you must kill what's killing you, then gets stuck on the word kill, repeating it over and over.
You're infected.
Grant attempts to cure Sydney by convincing her that the word kill now means kiss, repeating kill as kiss over and over until her symptoms subside. Having now found the cure, Sydney tells Grant to kill her, then kisses him. With the knowledge of how to stop the virus, they go on air one last time, saying a series of confusing phrases to help cure the infected, while the military warns them against it.
Grant Mazzy here.
After a few minutes of bombardments on the radio station, the military begins to count down from 10, so Sydney joins Grant in the booth for one last kiss. And the movie ends. Pontypool is a 2008 horror film directed by Bruce McDonald and written by Tony Burgess.
There we go.
Based on his novel Pontypool Changes Everything, a spin-off called Dreamland was released in 2019. The lead actors Stephen McHattie and Lisa Houle are also married in real life. The story was produced as both a motion picture and as a radio play, being influenced by Orson Welles' infamous radio production of The War of the Worlds. The radio play only ran approximately 58 minutes long, as opposed to the film's running time of 95 minutes. There are 3 stages to the virus. The first stage is you repeat a word, the second is you can't express yourself, and the third stage is you feel that the only way out of the situation is to try and chew your way through the mouth of another person. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.
This is Osama bin Laden.
Warm from the sun. Blood.
What?